Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Verbal to Visual podcast. I am your host, Doug Neill, and on this show, you get to listen to one-on-one coaching calls that I have with folks who are developing and using their sketchnoting skills. Today, I'm chatting with Mike Sadov, who is just starting to explore digital sketchnoting with the goal of creating more visual presentations for his work as a coach and teaching other people how to coach. We talk about the tools that can make that possible, as well as how to adapt text-heavy presentations to a more visual format and do that transition as a gradual process without having to recreate your work from scratch. For show notes, head on over to verbaltovisual.com/22. Let's get into it.
First of all, I am a total beginner. I am a rookie. I have, not much clue about anything. So that's probably important to start with. I have finished 2 of your courses. One was the basics, like the intro into sketchnoting.
Nice.
And the other one was using digital tools to sketch better, or something like that.
Yeah.
So my story is fairly simple. I loved drawing when I was a kid, and I finished probably when I was 12. But I was drawing for 4 years, and I was kind of advanced for a kid. I would, write comicses, and I would recreate history moments, and I would draw them. So then I kind of stopped, and I don't remember exactly why that happened, but maybe because I was demotivated by something. Maybe someone was drawing better than me, and I was upset with that. Today, I want to come back to that, but for a very specific goal. So I do teach a lot. I coach, I teach people how to coach, and I coach them on how to coach, and I teach different concepts, ideas, tools, etc. Currently, I'm using presentations, literally slides, to accompany me as I coach, my audience, or teach stuff. And I want to switch slides to sketchnoting.
Nice.
And I want to do it well. I want entertain and teach at the same time. And I'm trying basically to understand, how I do it, how I do it better, how, what does it mean for me to be crystal clear on how I do that, what kind of things I need. So I just purchased the Apple Pencil and iPad for that.
Nice.
I will download Notable.
Notability? Is that
Notability
the app?
is,
That's
yes.
the one that's caught your eye so far?
Yeah,
Nice.
Notability. It looks like it will help. And then I will also download Ecamm for Zoom. And I will use Ecamm to stream from my iPad screen to Zoom and from my camera to Zoom.
Nice.
Okay. So that's kind of from infrastructural point of view. Anything I'm missing here?
Say that again, the last piece.
Is there anything I'm missing in terms of how I plan to set it up?
That sounds like a good combo to me. I have actually also been interested in seeking out a software like Ecamm. I think I tried, what was the one that I just tried? I tried a different one that didn't quite work, maybe because my my laptop is a little bit old. Yeah. So I might actually try Ecamm next myself. Because so far I've just been using Zoom and a handful of different tablets. So
how do you switch without Ecamm, from Zoom, from your camera to your tablet screen? How do you switch?
Yeah, so already built in within Zoom, or at least it might be like some plugin that you have to download as you're using Zoom.
Mhm.
You can share your screen. You can connect to your iPad via AirPlay, or via
Mm.
a cable
USB,
connection.
yeah.
Yeah. And most of the time, the AirPlay connection works great. Sometimes,
Yeah,
like, it can't find it, or, if they're not,
yeah.
if either of your devices maybe doesn't have the latest update to it, that might
Hmm.
interrupt or make it harder to connect. But
Hmm.
I always have the USB connection as a backup. Um, so that's been my go-to for kind of making that connection between Zoom and the
Hmm.
iPad, which has been great. Like, I don't know if you've seen some of the kind of mastermind webinars, or
Yeah.
I tend to use Concepts as my app
Hmm.
of choice when doing live sketchnoting on a
Hmm.
webinar. I think Notability is a great choice too, because it has a nice
Hmm.
flow to it.
What
Uh,
is the difference between like concepts and notability for like, so I don't want to use, when it comes to taking notes for myself, I just use plain, pen and paper.
yeah.
So I want to use notability or concepts only for teaching and illustrating what I'm trying to teach.
Gotcha. The main thing that I think about as far as the difference between Notability and Concepts, um, Notability has a great kind of top to bottom flow to it.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like you can scroll from one page to the next. It's built as as a note taking tool. So you've got a
Hmm.
handful of like helpful options up top
Hmm.
to choose from. Concepts, it's a little bit more of a sketching tool.
Hmm.
It's got an infinite canvas, so you can like grow your thing as big as you want.
Hmm.
And I use it and really like it as a mind mapping tool.
Hmm.
So with the mind maps that I create on Concepts, I usually, start with the topic in the center of the page, and then kind of branch out as the main
Hmm.
ideas come up, and it can kind of
Hmm.
like grow as big as it needs to be, but it
Hmm.
stays as kind of one page, um, or one canvas at least.
Hmm.
Uh, that's my favorite way for doing kind of live real time sketchnoting, mainly just because I like the mind mapping structure so
Yeah.
much. Uh, with that said, I do appreciate Notability, and Good Notes is similar as well, because it's a little bit more of a stripped down tool.
Hmm.
And you can kind of like, yeah, it's great for kind of like column sketch notes, like top
Hmm.
to bottom, where you just kind of can keep scrolling down the page as new ideas come. And it's easy to scroll, back if you
Hmm.
need to reference something, or keep going down your notes that way.
So cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So got it. Yeah. Another question is the preparation. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk a
one,
little bit about what your
yeah, like
coaching
one,
looks like, and your lessons and all that.
yeah, one reason I like using slides is because it helps me organize my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me organize the flow of a lesson. I know what should be said, before and after. And it also serves me as a reminder of what I was going to say. For instance, sometimes I will create a lesson, but the time for this lesson will come only in a few months. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like already forgot what I was going to teach them.
Right.
Right. And then I see the slides and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what I was going to say here, and this is what I'm going to say here, etc. So my kind of fear is that if I switch to from slides to sketches to sketchnoting, I will kind of like I will be blanking out pretty much like for the 80% of the lesson, because I don't remember what I was going to say, and I will have to prepare like right before the lesson, and it might change and I will lose the research I've done and all of that.
Yeah.
So how, like, what what part of the processes I can change so I still do the sketchnote instead of slides, but I don't lose the kind of the flow I was getting through the slides before.
Yeah. I kind of see a few options for you. And because I think all the things that you described about kind of the way you approach
Mm-hmm.
creating slides in general, I think you can still do that when taking a sketchnoting approach to creating whatever it is that you're creating. And I'm a fan of within your prepared sketchnoted
Yeah.
slides, still do those in advance. So maybe like, and this will depend on kind of the content of
Yeah.
your lessons, but you can have the ideas in the sketch notes already created,
Mm-hmm.
um, but still maybe leave blank spaces within that presentation for maybe the things you want to discuss with the client that you're working with, like spaces to add the specifics to that particular conversation, but kind of everything else stays the same. So,
Oh,
yeah, I
so
don't
you're
know what it
saying,
is like.
yeah, like prepare sketches instead of slides and then leave some blank spaces to add as you go. So it adds some kind of entertainment and dynamics to the presentation, right?
Yeah, you can leave some things blank that maybe you want to add live.
Yeah.
Um, and those things could be part of your like presentation, or
Mm-hmm.
it could be the things that the input from your client. Like maybe you describe something. Maybe this is like your first page is just a full, like this one is just a full sketch noted slide. So it's kind of information that you're sharing. But maybe the second one, it's more of a, maybe there are some reminders around here, but it's more of like a prompt, maybe like on this one here. This could be something that maybe like you fill based on the conversation that you're having with your client. Like, depending on when and where like the interactive pieces of your coaching takes place,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that could be those could be spaces that you leave blank. And then and even like you mentioned, you're kind of like a rookie sketch noter. Even if this is just like bullet points, you don't have to be super fancy with how you fill this in the moment, but just having some blank spaces maybe for those places where client input comes in,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe if you just want a little bit more of a dynamic presentation, a few places that you leave to sketch out or write out in the moment. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, as you mentioned, keeping in mind that uh, anything that you have to fill in as you're presenting, you'd have to remember what the thing is that's supposed to go there.
Yes.
So, if that's a concern, I would lean more toward like kind of preparing the full sketch note. And
And
I
for
will
where I'm,
mention
yeah, go ahead.
one thing I'll mention about Notability, which you may or may not have seen, is that if you use their recording feature, it's meant for kind of audio lectures.
Yeah.
You can record it, it captures the audio, but then it also captures all of your strokes, all the
Mm-hmm.
writing and drawing that you create. So you can just kind of use the timeline to play that back.
Mm-hmm.
So that using that timeline scroll could be a way that you present it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like at any point along that timeline where you want to add things in, you could stop scrubbing along the timeline and add in more details. Um,
Oh, that's
and then
interesting.
keep it going, and it'll continue playing whatever else you had created kind of further down the
Oh,
page.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And how do I, so first of all, I assume that once I've done like the preparation notes or sketch notes, I can retrieve this document and I can start sharing my screen and I can add parts that I want to add, right, on the existing document. So I guess that's the part of functionality, right? Like that's what Notability.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you might like that brings up a good point that you might create kind of like a master presentation that maybe you want to reuse, but then with each coaching session that you have, you maybe duplicate that so that you can edit it specific to that client without
Right.
adjusting your master
Yes.
presentation. That can be
Okay.
good
Got it.
workflow.
And maybe there are some templates already in Notability that can be used probably. Yeah.
I bet so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how do I, as I teach, how do I, instead of looking at my iPad and showing them like, my boldness, how I actually like literally draw and look at them. So how do I keep an eye contact while I'm doing that?
That's a good question. I'm with you on the balding head part from when looking down. Uh, and I think it'll be a back and forth. Because I think what's interesting, especially like thinking about the situation that we have right now, we're using Zoom. I'm sharing I have been using Miro, a kind of a
Mhm.
collaborative whiteboard app
Yeah.
for these coaching calls. So that's the screen that I'm sharing on Zoom, but you still see
Mhm.
us, like our thumbnail, faces up in the right corner. And I've
Mhm.
been going back and forth between jotting down, capturing our conversation here and looking up at you.
Mhm.
And I think the benefit there is like, especially since it takes up most of the screen, the Miro
Mhm.
board does, when you're drawing, like the person you're working with isn't going, they're going to want to see what you're drawing and sketching out. So they'll be looking at that. So they
Mhm.
won't, I don't think they'll care if your head is down. But then kind of once you're done drawing and you want to, maintain that
Mhm.
kind of face to face and have those nonverbal cues, that's when you can, of course, look up. And
Mhm.
what I have here is nice too, because, and you would have this too when sharing your Notability screen and using Ecamm too, which I will say, like Ecamm will provide kind of more options for how you set up your screen.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
that'll be great. But the way it's set up is that like I can see the Miro board when I'm looking up at my computer. I can also see it when I'm looking down on my iPad.
Mhm.
So just that, like after you've sketched out the thing and you're looking up again, having
Right.
the conversation, you still had that quick reference to whatever you
Mhm.
sketch noted or, wherever you are in the lesson. So that's kind of
Mhm.
handy.
Okay. Yeah. How do you like as you prepare your sketch notes for the lecture? Do you try to make it like look really great, like perfect?
Hmm.
So you spend a lot of time on actually making sure that your notes and your sketches look fantastic.
I guess it kind of depends on like what stage of development the presentation is at.
Mhm.
So like the two main ways that I'm sharing ideas and creating lessons, um, I have this Wednesday workshop series where
Mhm.
I use Zoom. This is within verbal to visual, like folks are connected live. And lately I've been using Keynote on the iPad and like
Mhm.
preparing maybe at least one slide, and using Keynote's animation features
Mhm.
to kind of like show how those sketches come together. Those I don't mind them being rough and unpolished because it's a live
Yeah.
workshop setting.
Yeah.
And for most of those, like I'm kind of sharing those ideas for the first time in that
Mhm.
live setting. Um, so I don't worry about perfection. I get it to be a
Mhm.
good enough place and a
Yeah.
good like reference for that conversation.
Mhm.
I would compare and contrast that to, a lesson that I might make for an online course, like the final version of an online course. I
Right.
would spend a little more time polishing and like getting as good as possible because, those are videos that I hope are useful for the next decade or more
Yes.
potentially, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the live workshops, yeah, they might be useful in a decade, but
Mhm.
it's more the live piece that's most important.
Is it possible to, let's say, I'm using slides to prepare myself for the lesson, but every slide is laid out in a way that I have like 50% that is like typed, and then the half of it is like ready for my sketches. And assuming that the right part is all white, I can upload PDF to my Notability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can retrieve this document and I can sketch on it as I go.
Yeah.
Like, do you think it might work as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And so that would also be like just thinking about where it sounds like you're kind of like in this transition. It sounds like you have a lot of these slides you've already created, like you've got the material that you've been working with, and you want to make it a little more dynamic, maybe a little more visual, but you probably don't want to spend months recreating all of those presentations. Like, so what you just described, I think, is a cool way to go through this transition process where within each slide, like, the left-hand slide is like the PDF or, whatever version of those presentations you already have. And then you have a certain amount of the screen set aside for live sketching. Or it could be live or prepped, like some, even like the thing that we just mentioned about, preparing some of those sketch notes in advance. You could still use that
so good,
that side for some prepped ones, but maybe like for each page, you don't, for each slide here, maybe just like create one sketch that you feel like might be helpful. So even like this might be getting too much of a breakdown, but like the side that you have for sketches, maybe the top half is prepped, so you have something there, and this bottom half stays blank so that you can do some like live sketches in the moment as things come up.
I love it. So I'm gonna try it. Thank you so much for what you do. I do appreciate it. It's just beautiful.
Well, thank you, Mike. It was fun chatting with you. Cool to hear what you're up to, and good luck with your presentations. Keep us updated, or keep me updated on how it goes as you do that kind of merging and experimenting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Cheers.
All right.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
See you, Mike. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and that it sparked some ideas for how you might take on an upcoming presentation, maybe using some of the digital tools that Mike and I chatted about. If you want to dive deeper into that specific tool set, then check out our course, Digital Sketchnoting. There I share some of the most popular apps for sketchnoters, as well as how to make the most of the features that those tools offer and create a digital sketchnoting process that works really well for you. And when you sign up for any of our courses, you also get access to one-on-one coaching calls like what you just heard. You can learn more about that at verbaltovisual.com and add a /22 to get to the show notes for this specific episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing another conversation with you soon. Till next time.